Hello and welcome to another edition of Questions for Lawyers. I'm your host, Jeff Adelman. The purpose of this show is to get rid of a lot of the anxiety that comes with speaking to an attorney for the first time and getting some of those questions out of the way that a lot of people ask initially. And, they, again, have some anxiety about speaking to lawyers that I've found. And I thought, my clients ask me these questions. Why not get some people I know that are experts in their field on the air and have them answer them for the audience, for my clients, and for other people who might be interested? And it is such an incredible honor today to welcome to the audience Brian Cohen of DLA Piper. He is an extraordinary person, attorney, and he happens to be my cousin as well. So, Brian, thanks so much for joining us today from downtown Chicago.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to do this.
Well, me too. Brian, if you could, can you please tell the audience a little bit about your training and your background?
Yes, so I went to University of Illinois for college and then Northwestern for law school. I've been working at DLA Piper my entire career, which has been a little over 15 years. And I practice transactional real estate, which is acquisition and disposition of properties, leasing, development, financing, condominiums. I do a wide variety of work in the field.
Can you tell us a little bit about DLA Piper?
So DLA Piper is one of the largest firms in the world. It has offices all over the country and all over the world. And one of the things that we try to make sure is that just about anything that our clients want to do in just about any location, we're able to do it for them. And if for some reason we don't have an office or a specialty, we typically have contacts at other firms who can help solve their problems.
Now, you're talking to us remotely from Chicago, and we're in the studio in Coral Springs, Florida. Do you have any offices in Florida?
We do. We have an office in Miami.
Okay, perfect. Well, how did you get involved in this particular area of the law? Specifically, we're talking about commercial real estate transactions.
Well, I knew I wanted to do transactional law. I liked the idea of being an advisor to businesses and helping make deals and really being a consultant who specializes in the law. Right before I started law school, I had an opportunity to be a summer intern at the law department of Walgreens. And they practice in a lot of different fields, but the most interesting for me was the area of real estate. Working for Walgreens was like working for a real estate company because they opened so many new stores in a year. And once I practiced there, I just knew that that was what I wanted to do, and eventually got my opportunity at DLA, and I've been there ever since.
Well, tell us this. What is the most expensive type of transaction that you've ever personally been involved with? I don't need a name or anything like that, but if you could kind of give the audience an idea of the kind of money, the kind of clients that you've actually handled their deals.
Well, for a single asset deal, typically the most expensive would be in a downtown office building.
Sure.
But some of the more expensive deals are either portfolios or they're mergers and acquisitions. Sometimes a company can buy another company, and either that company is in the real estate business or they have a lot of real estate because they have a lot of stores or they have a lot of plants. So real estate can be a key element of that.
Well, have you ever been involved in, like, for example, the sale of a building in downtown Chicago?
Yes, that's very common. One of the more interesting ones was the sale of the Wrigley building in Chicago.
Oh, you were involved with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is pretty significant. That's pretty expensive property right over there. Well, tell us, what are the key elements of a commercial real estate transaction?
Well, there are a few. One is the basic terms, which would include things like the purchase price, the timing of the transaction, the closing date, the earnest money amount. Another element is pre-closing matters. That would deal with how does the buyer investigate the property, and how does the seller operate the property between when the contract is signed and the closing. Then you have representations and warranties of the seller. That's where the seller makes certain promises and tells you certain items about the property so that you can better make an educated decision about the property, and also so that you have remedies against the seller in case something they told you turned out not to be true and you find this out after closing. Another element is conditions precedent to closing. Those are the reasons that you can decide not to close and walk away from the deal. Things like the building burns down, you cannot find enough estoppels from tenants, or other unexpected items come up between the contract and the closing. You want to make sure the contract appropriately deals with those instances. And the final key point is the default section, and that deals with, obviously, what happens if either party doesn't do what it's supposed to. Typically, if a buyer does not show up to closing or has another significant default, the buyer loses its earnest money. If the seller doesn't close...
What is earnest money?
So earnest money is a buyer, to show its interest in the deal, will put down a certain percentage of the purchase price or a certain flat dollar amount. Typically, a title company will hold it. At closing, it will get released to the seller. But if the deal doesn't close, depending on the circumstances of it not closing, the money would go either to the buyer or to the seller.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, because that's not a term that people usually use when I'm over at Publix or at Dominic's or anything like that.
Well, so, I typically use it at Publix, so maybe you're just shopping with different people than I am.
Seriously, I think maybe I should go with you next time I'm in Deerfield. Let me ask you, because I always like to get in, I think that as lawyers, some of the more interesting stories are when things go wrong. We all have our successes and everything else. What are some of the stranger things that have been requested in a transaction last minute?
Sometimes when a family business is selling a portfolio of property, you can find out late in the deal that one of the principals wants to work for the buyer. And that's something that you would want to happen in advance, but sometimes that can happen late in the deal.
So you've seen that happen before then?
Yes.
Okay. What is it that gives you the most satisfaction about what you do?
It's trying to solve problems. I think it's important when you're negotiating a contract to realize that not everything is zero sum. Not everything is, I take it from you so that I gain. A lot of times we can find something where I focus on what's important to you and you focus on what's important to me, and we can both feel better off in addressing an issue.
Yeah, well, and that's what you're known for.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I know personally the law can be a stressful field. We all deal with it in different ways. How is it that you deal with stress, dealing with these multi-million-dollar deals? How is it that you personally deal with stress?
Well, the first thing I do is try to avoid stressful situations in the first place. I think a lot of stress that comes up in deals is due to lack of preparation or last-second negotiation. And to the extent you can get issues out of the way early in the deal and get documents prepared, then the deal in general is going to be less stressful. And obviously you can't completely eliminate stress. So when I do come into these stressful situations, I try to make sure I keep a sense of perspective about what I'm dealing with and what the consequences are. And sometimes it's good to just get up and take a walk and come back to your desk and then rethink about an issue.
I think that's all really good advice. I'm sorry I was chuckling a little bit, but one of our frequent listeners, watchers, Frank Hara, wrote a comment, Ernest Goes to Camp, and I know that is your favorite movie. So, I mean, I don't know how he picked that one out, but, I mean, he's got the right guy.
Well, you have a splendid audience. I'm very happy to hear that.
We're very sophisticated here in Coral Springs, Florida, and Frank's over in Miami, and we only like highbrow movies. So,
Yes.
You'd fit right in with us.
Thank you.
Also, Frank wants to know the best place to get a Chicago hot dog. And you knew I was going to ask you that because that's really all that matters about this, right?
I would say probably Portillo's. The nice thing about Chicago is just about all of the hot dog places serve Vienna beef, so you're not going to see much difference from hot dog place to hot dog place. Very many of them are good, but I would say Portillo's.
Okay. Well, I happen to agree with you on that, so that's good. And I guess in the same vein, I'll be up there in October. What's the best place for deep dish?
Uno's.
It is Uno's?
That's my view on it.
Oh, because you're wrong. I think it's I think it's Lou Malnati's, but again, I'll be happy to eat both. That's quite.
Well, I think reasonable people can disagree.
Can they these days? Really? Well, also, I know that you have to travel sometimes for your job. When you do travel to different areas across the country and across the world, it's not just you involved in the transaction. Do you usually go with local counsel as well?
When I physically travel to a meeting, usually not, but we typically do involve local counsel in our deals. You always have to involve a local lawyer when it's a state you're not practicing in.
Right.
But with local counsel in general, it's important to make sure they're involved in the purchase agreement negotiation. You don't want to bring them in too late because there are just intricacies of various jurisdictions that you might not know if you don't practice there. For example, in the city of Chicago, in order to record a deed, you need a water certification. And if somebody from another city or another state didn't know that, and it was the day of closing and they tried to get that, they would not be able to get it in time to close.
Well, then that could make the whole deal go south. So for the amount of money it costs to bring in local counsel, you do it when you're dealing with that kind of a transaction. You don't be cheap on that. So
that's right.
What would you recommend to a young lawyer or somebody who's graduating from law school who wants to get into your field of commercial real estate transactions?
Well, while you're in law school, you want to make sure, if you can, that you can take drafting and negotiating classes. Law school can be very focused on litigation, but most law schools have classes in your field. Once you've graduated, it's all about, just like any job, it's all about looking for opportunities, being open to starting at the bottom, and using the contacts that you have. People generally will be happy to do you a favor.
Uh-oh.
My motion sensor turned off the light. I wasn't moving for long enough.
Oh, I thought it was something about what you said about Uno's. I thought somebody maybe the yank.
That's right.
Oh, that is funny. Well, let me also ask you this, and this is something that I was really concerned about. Did you like the new Ghostbusters movie?
I liked it. I didn't think it was as good as the original one. My daughter loves it. It's one of her favorite movies, my youngest daughter.
Yeah, I actually thought they did a terrific job with it. You can never duplicate the greatness of 1984's Ghostbusters. Greatest movie in the history of movie making. I think you will agree.
Yeah, that's right. But look, if somebody tried to paint the Mona Lisa, they could probably do a good job, as the new movie did, but it's never going to be the Mona Lisa.
Exactly. That's what I try to tell people, because there was a lot of harsh criticism. I'm like, if it's even half of perfection, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, they had a difficult task, and I admire that they took on the challenge of essentially repainting the Mona Lisa.
That's terrific. And again, I wanted to bring up something else that before we get off of here. You do not go to court. You are not a litigation attorney.
That's right. That's right. We try to, in our field, in our firm, have specialists in all different areas. And so I devote my time to real estate and joint ventures and areas associated with real estate. And I consult with litigators when it's necessary, both to try to avoid litigation and when there's a contentious situation, but that's not my specialty.
That was a perfect transition from Ghostbusters to litigation, don't you think?
Thank you.
Yeah,
when we talked about this interview,
huh?
If somebody is playing bingo at home and they had the Mona Lisa, Ghostbusters, and Ernest Goes to Camp, they would have bingo at this point.
Seriously, I don't know if those three things have ever been put in one show before. We've made history today.
Thank you.
Seriously. Yes. Well, Brian, thanks so much for coming on with me. I mean, obviously, I respect your ability as an attorney and your talent, but this is really special for me because obviously, you're my oldest friend pretty much. So, as my first,
this has been great. It's been great to speak
around and all that. Can you tell everybody out there, if they want to reach you, how can they do that?
So our website is worldwideweb.dlapiper.com, and that's where you could look up my profile and see my information. And of course, people could always call me, which is 312-368-8865. And I'd be happy to speak to anybody. And whether or not I end up ultimately engaged as the lawyer, I'd be happy to just bounce ideas off of people.
Did you say 312-368-8865?
That's correct.
All right. I'm going to pop it up there if anybody
is
interested. Well, again, this has been my pleasure, Brian, to have you on. For those of you who are regular listeners, watchers, next week, the tables are turned on me. I will have a guest host, Frank Hara, who will be interviewing me about personal injury. Believe it or not, that has not happened yet. So I promise to try my best to be entertaining and to tell you some things about personal injury that you might not know. Again, every person that's been on here does different areas of the law. We all are trained as lawyers, and we get that degree. We can go into any field. But as they say, if you practice all of them, Brian, you could be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So, and you are a master, and I really appreciate you being on. And I'll probably give you a call later this week.
All right, well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Again, next Tuesday, May 28th, I'm on the hot seat with Frank Hara. Be well, everybody.